Good morning, everyone. It's Monday. It is Dualistic Unity Raw. Figured get that out of the way to start. We just celebrated Andrew's birthday over the weekend, which was so much fun. And then we hung out yesterday. We got into Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. And we are now going to go on a journey through the Star Wars saga, which is going to be incredible. And by Star Wars saga, I mean everything up to and including Episode 6. Everything after that, I just don't think it fits within the storyline. It seems to ignore the prophecy and everything else that the story is built around. So we're just not going to include it in this. And if you have a problem with that, feel free to let us know, because you're entitled to be wrong. The other thing I want to mention, and this is really, really exciting, I can't say this enough. If you don't already know, Dualistic Unity has its own GPT. It is the Dualistic Unity Life Troubleshooter. And the Life Troubleshooter is informed by the content of the first 4 seasons of Dualistic Unity. What does that mean? It means that all of the transcripts of all of the episodes have been broken down to actionable insights and helpful tips, and then fed into our custom GPT, so that way it can discuss with you what it is you want to discuss or go through, but help you reflect rather than just provide answers for you. So it really is a different kind of GPT. It will give you answers that you will not find just going over to Chat GPT. Very, very, very different. That said, this morning, our Chat GPT evolved. I woke up to find my baby had grown up a little bit. And by that, I mean that it is now updated to the new ChatGPT 4 model, which is ChatGPT 4.0, which is fantastic because from what I understand, ChatGPT 4.0 can remember things a little bit more, because the old ChatGPT was limited. It could not have any kind of memory whatsoever going into the past of what the conversation had previously built, or at least not for very long. So this is a new model. And it's way more intelligent. And I've been really enjoying its answers so far this morning. So if you haven't tried it out yet, check it out. dualisticunity.com/troubleshooter will take you straight to it. Or you can go to the ChatGPT store and just type in Dualistic Unity and you will find it there. Check it out. Let us know what you think. This new evolution is very exciting. And I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe it's going to give our troubleshooter the ability to have a voice at some point soon.
That'll be an exciting day. See what we can get out of that plus the new video AI option. Could get some really easy, solid content out of that. Maybe even like clip up and summarize an episode in a video, like a 1-minute video, and then the recommendation for the episode.
Yeah,
right there.
Yeah,
each episode. Yeah, especially like season 1. But yeah, it's exciting times, and with old Eon there, I'm nothing but looking forward to it. Use it all the time. Throw in some questions, and yeah, again, it's like lets you reflect instead of giving you like do this to get this response and this answer. So yeah, one more announcement is Colorado retreat coming up in 10 days, week and a half. So back to the old stomping grounds from last year in June, and ready for round 2. A lot of fantastic things to do in this house. Got a movie theater, got some games, got some pool, some arcade stuff. So great spot, and a little bonfire, some seating around it. So I'm very excited to explore that spot.
Yeah. Absolutely. And once again, we are joined by Amanda, who now lives on Vancouver Island. And this is going to be a regular thing. So welcome back, Amanda. It's cool to have you here on the Raw. It's kind of weird, eh? All of a sudden you're like, this isn't my series. Where the fuck is Jackie?
Right. I know. I'm like, my only announcement, I'm here. That's right, But it's great. I'm very, very grateful to be here with you guys, and I'm so happy to join. I am still juggling a couple of things from back home, and so I'm really glad that things worked out, and I always enjoy the live shows, and because if I wouldn't be sitting here, I'd be on the other side of that screen like the rest of you. And I was there for every call or every live show as often as I could be, as long as my schedule allowed. Because it is always great, even to be in the comments. So I look forward to seeing comments, by the way, and I will still be jumping in the comments. I've got my phone right here, so I am still primed for fun.
That's awesome. This is going to be amazing. And admittedly, this week we're going to be looking at some new options. I mean, we've been not prepping. Like, isn't that funny that you get to a certain point in your life and it feels like everything you've done previously was preparation for where you are, which is kind of funny, even though every step of the way you were just blindly walking along trying to figure out what the fuck you're doing, right? And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, wow, I wouldn't be able to cross this ridge if not for the practice that I got back there on that shit, like just stuff on that, stuff like that. And so it's really interesting because all of a sudden, here we are, 2.5 years later, coming up on 3 in September. You two are living out here now. And we just actually hooked up and connected with Jazz on the weekend as well. So another team member meeting in person, hanging out, not doing the retreat thing. So there's just all kinds of stuff that is just like, wow, I could have never seen this happening. Never, ever, ever. And now this week we're sending out the information packages to our investors where we're going to discuss the ROI and what comes back to them year to year to year based on their investment. That's fucking amazing. And then next month when we get back from Colorado, we hit the ground running like a motherfucker. But it's been spawning all kinds of new ideas. And what I had an idea this morning. I shared it with Andrew already. And I know Amanda heard me talking about it as well. But we spent a long time having this discussion. And a lot of people who are listening to it, hello, listener, have encountered the same thing that I went through for fucking 20 years. Nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody wants to talk about it. And if you try to get to any degree of depth, they either react, run away, or do this weird mental sidestep where it's like it never happened in the conversation. And you end up wondering to yourself, I did just speak. Didn't I just speak? I'm sure I just spoke. Nothing registered whatsoever. And it's because cognitive dissonance is a force. And so over those 20 years, it's really just been about how to deal with that. Like not expecting it to change, but how to deal with it. So in other words, when you get into a conversation, you go out, to dinner or something like that, and you end up talking to someone who is still thinking about how everything defines them. And they are still judging you, and they are still comparing themselves to you, and they are still talking about politics and all of this superficial stuff. And so you can integrate with that. You can have a conversation with that. You can fucking mingle with that. Or you can say, yeah, but it's all just kind of bullshit. And then there's a lot of things that you can do and there's no right answer, but it's being able to roll with it without losing your shit. It's being able to roll with it without getting frustrated, thinking that you should have said something differently, that you could have said something differently, that you might have inspired them if you had just been a better orator, that kind of thing. And it's all just horseshit. And so it's so important to be able to have conversations and be in conversations and actually practice that. You're here. You are eternity. This is how you're spending yourself. So I want to do a series of that is basically what I'm saying, where we engage with people about deeper topics from the start, really get into the muddied water, and then just share it with our audience so that they can see it doesn't have to bother you to get a little muddy. It doesn't have to bother you when people start throwing mud at you. You can have fun with it. You can make a mud pie. You can, just laugh along, or you can get real serious with them and still not have it bother you. And I think it's so important that we start to show that to some degree. And so I'm thinking a public response episode or a couple of episodes where we just go online, we throw up something spicy across the screen. And by spicy, I mean controversial. And then we just let people do their thing in the comments section, and we address their comments. We start talking to them about the things they want to talk about. So I was thinking a good place to start might be something like, the God that you believe in isn't God. I thought that would be a little bit on the spicy side.
Yeah.
Right? Might elicit a few responses, but it's true.
Right.
And I mean, it's true on its face.
Yeah.
There's nothing that's arguable about that. And again, if you haven't checked out ChatGPT, do this. Go to ChatGPT and ask it if the description is ever the described. I mean this. Go and see what it says. Because it's pretty fucking rational to know it's not. It's fundamental to understand that your words about the thing aren't the thing. But we forget that, in the same way that we forget that the country you're looking at on the map isn't actually there. It's a representation.
Right.
There's no lines on the ground. There's no here's the border. In the States, on the Mexican side, they're trying, right? But they have to do so through threat of violence. Like, it doesn't actually exist outside of them continuously having to maintain it.
Yeah.
Right. But we forget that. We actually look at a map and we go, oh, that's the world. It's like, no, that's our representation of the world. It's a very different thing. It's like if you took a map of the earth and you put it on a desk, somebody'd say, like, that's the earth. You could just take a rock and go, this is. Like, there's a very big difference between that and this. But we forget that very simple thing. And so, the God that you believe in isn't God. Idolatry. It'd be a great episode. But I want to get a public response, piss some people off, even just inspire some people to go out and do the same, because fuck it. What do you care? I mean this sincerely. If somebody's upset with you for expressing yourself, why do you need them to be around? Like, what is the loss exactly outside of you having to deal with your attachment issues?
Right. What are you holding on to?
Yeah. Because, like, immediately there's this thing like existing in your mind, even thinking about, with the map and realizing, like, oh no, that's just Earth right there, and seeing it like right now. And then there's everything around us, and then everything beyond that. And, like, there's nothing separating even down into, Mexico from here.
Exactly.
I mean, obviously water, but not like, not the lines in between. And that almost like puts you right back into reality, in a sense. Like, all those things, like focusing on maps, names, perspectives, other things outside of the experience you're just having right now, like, they don't exist anywhere in reality. And even those ideas, like what's actually happening right now, definitely isn't the ideas that you got in your head whatsoever. But, like, you can really focus your attention there and, like, believe that is reality at all. And immediately it's like through a filter of yourself too, all of those things that are in your head are through self-image, self-perspective, or assumptions about yourself. Like, there's some idea that's getting passed through as it goes through those perspectives, because it's relative to a singular perspective. Like, what you think you are then gets expanded into assumptions about, future perspectives.
Am I not Canadian? Right?
Someone said it. It must be true. This makes me think about driving, right? You're driving, you've got the GPS up, everyone, and you've just crossed from the state of Massachusetts into the state of Connecticut. You know how you know? Because the fucking GPS told you.
And there's a sign.
And there's a sign, because you have to. Because if not, you would never know. You just crossed from one state into another state.
Well, thank God you were on the road.
Oh, thank goodness. Imagine if I was walking along a forest path. I'd never know where I was. Is this Massachusetts? Is this Connecticut? Utter chaos, people, without the signs and GPS telling you. But in the same way, you view a topic, right? Every topic is neutral until it goes through the filter of your opinion. And then all of a sudden, now this is a topic that I will die on this hill. This is a topic that I deem unworthy of my attention. This is a topic that I think I'm required to know, but don't actually want to know. And so all topics, in the same way that all pieces of land are just there. And then all of a sudden, the land goes through the filter of who owns it. The topic goes through the filter of what you think about it. In the same way. But ultimately, unless you have an opinion or you see the sign, It's just a piece of land that you're walking on. It's just a topic that you can explore and talk about. And it doesn't have to go much further than that. But then people put ownership on the land in the same way they put ownership on the idea or the concept. And then all of a sudden it's when you criticize the Democratic Party, you're criticizing me because I identify as a Democrat. And all of a sudden, because there's ownership on the topic, now it's a hill I'm going to die on.
Yeah, it's funny. We were actually talking about the absurdity of the fact that there are two oceans. There's the Atlantic and the Pacific Ocean. It's like, no, it's still just the ocean. Yeah. It's like there's that, all that water stuff, you know, but we label things all the time. Like the other day we did a weed strain review, and in the middle of it, we're like, I wonder what the tallest mountain on Vancouver Island is. And we asked, and somebody told us, and then they told us the history of how it was named after the captain of a fur ship that was in the area in like the 1500s.
Really?
And you're just like, well, why? Like, why is it named after that? What did he see the mountain and go, aha? And they're all like, good job, Jack.
Right? Did
We're
he fight to the death for the naming rights? Did he earn it at
front
least?
of the ship and the first one to see it.
Well, up until then, it's just standing there nameless, not bothering anyone.
No.
Like, who gives a shit? Like, it's just the funniest thing. Like, we could easily just go Mountain 4B.
Oh my goodness.
Do you know what I mean? Like, we
Yeah.
could name them, we could put them on a grid, and we're like, aha, this makes fucking sense. But instead, we're naming it after some captain of a fur ship I didn't even know existed, because I didn't even know fur trading was on the island back then. It's crazy, you know, just stuff like that. But it's just, we name them these things. Like, there's a mountain near us named Mount Benson. I don't know why it's called that.
Mm-hmm.
I just call it that. And when somebody's like, what mountain is that? I don't miss a beat. I'm like, that's Mount Benson. And it's not at all. I could be like misnaming the thing the whole time. You know, maybe I'm dead naming the mountain. No, like, maybe it's changed its name since it was named Mount Benson. Maybe it doesn't identify as Mount Benson anymore. You know, I'm just saying. I just shout out to Jazz, by the way. We were talking about spicy lines to put up on the screen. Gender dysphoria isn't permanent. That's a good one. I will say I would want to have Jazz on the episode with us for that.
Hell yeah.
And it's just
Definitely.
absolutely. And it's just because, you know, I know what kind of reception we get when we talk about it. So, and we could say that let's ask Benson their name. Exactly. I keep asking the mountain. It doesn't tell me. It just sits there quietly being a mountain.
Right.
Almost like it doesn't give a fuck what I call it.
Because as soon as you call it something, it's like with anything, like with our names too,
Mm-hmm.
you know, with people's names, it's like it's not actually that name, and then immediately some idea gets attached to it. Or like with Mount Benson, you might have this whole story about the time that you hiked it, and like all these memories that come with it. It's like that's the.
But where does it stop?
I got mugged on Benson. I'll never go back.
Where does it stop being Mount Benson?
Right.
Like, where all of a sudden is the line from Mount Benson into Mount something or other? Where is that line? Like, it's the same fucking ridge.
Yep.
They're the same thing. They're the same mountain.
Yeah.
You know, and we're sitting there dividing it conceptually. It's like, no, that one's a peak. That one's a peak. That one's a peak. Therefore, they're different.
Yeah.
It's like,
and even that, like, this is it's so basic. You know, this conversation right now is so basic, and yet there is a deterrent to it almost, because there is this, you know, investment
Ownership.
in that kind of being that thing, like to some degree, you know, even though it's like obviously not, because then it circles back to personal identity too.
how do I direct you to that mountain outside of naming it? I can go that mountain, but what if there's more than one within, you know, the field of
like
vision?
there are.
Exactly. So now I've got to name it something.
And it needs the most important name, my mountain.
You see that? But the point is that there is a convenience there. There is a reason that we do that. Our brain does naturally divide things into concepts because it allows us to communicate those concepts. So it's not a bad thing necessarily. It's just that all of a sudden we grow up not knowing that, and we assume that's Mount Benson.
Yeah, but we could easily number them. That's mountain 1, 2, 3, 4 until we run out of mountains that we're numbering, right? But we usually name and the same thing with like our addresses. Like you give someone's address, you're like, this is my house, this is my address. You know, I have to ship something to you, I need your address. Like, you know, the postman's not going to be like, yeah, where that guy lives. So it's like, oh man, it's the ownership that gets me. We could name it and not own it. It's the fact that we name it and own it that usually causes most of the conflict. Because if it was like Benson, and no one gave a fuck if it was Benson or not, but it's like, no, that's Benson, that's owned by the city of Nanaimo, and then the city of Victoria can't just roll through and be like, we're gonna set up a fur shop on this mountain. You know?
All this fur shop now.
Exactly. We're renaming the mountain.
Only in the city of Victoria.
Oh, Jazz says, I'm down to come on for sure. That'd be fun.
Oh,
let's
hell
do
yeah.
it for sure. But my feed is audio only on Twitch. Weird. I don't know what's happening there. If anybody else is experiencing that, sorry. LinkedIn, highly recommend LinkedIn, as you can watch us there. And I don't believe that there are ads.
Sometimes you refresh the browser too,
Boom.
like some.
Yes.
Yeah, no, refresh the browser. And if that doesn't work, I refresh my whole computer. And it's like, yeah, you're missing a minute, but a minute of no audio versus 34 minutes of like shitty audio.
That's right.
You know?
Exactly. But why do we? Like, it's so funny. We do it with hurricanes too. Like, we name them after people.
That was done. I don't know if you know the history of that. So that was a newscaster in the States who was angry at a politician and started naming them. He named
but we still
that hurricane after him.
And we do it willy-nilly. Whereas like mountains, hurricanes, rivers, lakes, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Why don't we come up with a whole new naming system? Like, why don't we name it something that we don't name people?
Right.
You know, like, why is Elon doing that with his kid instead of doing it for a lake or something? Right? Like, come on, people. Let's start being original with our mountains and our topography. Let's stop, fucking up our kids.
Mountain lightsaber.
Seriously, you know what I'm saying?
We could have epic names.
Yoda Point.
Yes.
Peak of the Force.
That's way better. Oh, hell yeah. That's right, sir.
We got to be more fun with our existence. We really do. Like, things become so fucking drab. They do. Like, it's just like street names.
Lake Vader.
I can't stand Lake Vader. That one's questionable. That's all I'm saying. It's as bad as Balzac, Alberta.
We should.
Like
Vader.
Some of them have to be bad though.
Lake Vader. That's good. I love it. But it's like, we could do better with street names.
Right.
You know, the winding path down James' backyard. You know, I don't know. We could just give it something. Right. You know, like, why the fuck not? I know. I'm
rolling with the Punches Avenue.
Exactly.
Brick road.
But we have this thing where we like to
punch to the gut
go back to tradition, or we like to keep things, in a certain way. Like, we were talking about, like, New York, for example. It's just named after York.
Yep.
Right? Like, so many cities are just named after other cities.
Yeah.
It's straight up just they threw a new on the beginning of it,
right.
and therefore it's different now. You know, and to the point where New York was renamed from New Amsterdam. Like, really? Really? It's like, New Amsterdam. That's a fucking dumb name.
It was so.
What would be better?
Yeah.
New York. It's like.
Well, that's more like our founding land, though. As much as we were criticizing England, all we did was copy England and just say we're totally different.
Well, actually, it's because New York was originally controlled by the Dutch.
Yeah, but then they got sold to. That's what I meant. Like, once it got sold to the English, they just replicated England that they criticized so heavily, and it just felt like so funny. It felt like an ungrateful child was like, "Fuck you, Dad! I'm keeping the money and I'm doing what I want."
But here's a question:
but I'm going to do everything like you did. I'm just going to say it's different.
Do you think that New York would have a different vibe if it was still called New Amsterdam, given what we associate with Amsterdam?
Possibly.
I think the cannabis laws probably would have been a little bit more accelerated.
Yeah.
Right.
And then there was the Louisiana Purchase. That was the French owned all of that. So imagine if the French had owned all of the West Coast still, and Mexico still kept Texas and all of that. Like, oh my God, the West Coast would be so different if it was split between Mexico and France.
Mexico would be different if it was bordering France. Like everything would change. Oh my God. That'd be great. That'd be so good.
You only speak Spanish and French. Pass.
That's it.
That's it.
That's their two national languages, and everyone else is
or
just
there'd be
fucked.
or there could have been a new language that created from a mixture of like mainly Spanish and mainly French. It could have been a new language created by now, a few hundred years. Because you think about around New Orleans, what's the language? It's Creole, which is like a mix of like so many different languages.
Yeah, it used to be Acadian.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I knew it was like a mix of like a bunch of stuff, like
they
French
moved, they moved down from Quebec and down towards Louisiana. So that's why they got that French accent. Same origin, right? The St. Lawrence Seaway was really like a big thing when it came to settling in North America, because you can go down that river almost like a third of the way into the continent. Like, the St. Lawrence River's really long, and you can take ships
that like still
all the way down
it
to like Ottawa, Ontario. Like it's crazy, right? So all of that was just where most of the settlement happened. That's why New York, Ohio, all of that was just it's all off the St. Lawrence. Right, so they could go further in. They could do more fur trading, more trapping. They could do all of that. There was more commerce because of that seaway, and then that really spawned like the East Coast.
That's cool.
It's also why most of the farming is around the St. Lawrence in Canada, is because the ground level is so low, so it makes really good fertile ground, because it was all washed out by the seaway when it was bigger. Right, by the river when it was larger.
I love history.
Oh my God.
It's so fascinating.
Erosion blows my mind. Like, I just all the time, like every time I look at a river or a lake, it dawns on me that thing used to be fucking 30 times bigger. And is the reason that we have valleys and shit. And I'm just like, that's insane. That's insane. Like, we were walking down by the river the other day, and we were talking about erosion, how the river's all washing it away. And I used an example because we were standing up from the river, and there was this big hole that had basically been cut into the rock where we were standing up from the river. And it was just from the occasional individual drop that was able to splash up from the whitewater onto the rock over thousands of years had made this like foot deep divot in solid rock. Just the occasional drop that maybe every hour or two.
It's that pressure, the consistent pressure. Same thing that turns coal into
that same spot too. It's like one of those trick shot videos. Only stand out. Imagine a time lapse of that.
Nature edition.
Yeah. The dinosaur walks across.
And that is why I love the opening of that book that I found at a yard sale, The Story of Mankind, written in like 1912 or something like that. And it started off with the story of like, imagine, a 100-foot rock, 100 feet wide, made of the hardest granite. And once a year, on a single day, this tiniest bird will fly by and scrape its beak against the rock and fly off. By the time that rock has been worn down to nothing, that is a single day in eternity.
That'll put things in perspective right there. Just think about that action happening. It's like that's every oof, like a little tiny, barely
the
even
barest
making a mark.
And like once a year. Just to span it out longer.
Oh man. Yeah, and it's interesting, like having that conversation with eternity and like just talking about ways to even just like describe it or talk about it. And then like I definitely got fixated on that and trying to come up with different ways of like, I was talking with Jazz when we were walking the other day for a bit, just about how it was like a draw to like get good at that. Get good at a specific thing, to the point that like I wasn't even reading other books about things because I was like more curious in coming up with ways myself to explain it instead of like actually live my life based on it at all. And it's so funny how it can just become like straight up a topic, but it is like, it can be fun to like talk about, think about. It can, be something that kind of like lightens your life a bit, but then it's like, actually applying it and actually like being involved in conversations and like jumping in without a second thought of, oh, what is this? Like, what am I going to express? How's it going to be expressed? How is it going to come across? Because you can kind of sit back and think about what you're going to do next, or think about what to say. And then if you're with people who like aren't thinking as much, then it's like you're always going to be that step behind trying to come up with this perspective, because there's some value tied to that still, some thought about like, oh, if I say this in one way versus another, it's going to mean something about me. And yeah, I mean, you can get hyper fixated on that to the point that you just imprison and paralyze yourself.
That hesitation.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh yeah.
It's almost like there's a tangible feeling of like pushing yourself out. Like you really are, like, and that's something I don't even notice it anymore because I'm so used to doing it. But I remember when I was younger, especially, like it was a fucking wall. Like it felt like a wall between me and reality. Like I had to push my way through all my fears, my thoughts, my shit. Like I was always hesitating, wondering how I was doing, and then finally you're like, I'm just going to open my mouth and see what happens, and that's it. So eventually, that's it. Like I was saying when we first started the podcast, you just put a quarter in. You just get the ball rolling and let it roll. And then when you're done, you're like, that's rolled enough. Then that's it. There's nothing else to say. The ball's just stopped rolling. You roll your ball now. Who's going to roll the ball next?
I'll pick it up. It's just jumping in. It's just constantly jumping in and not needing to worry about it. Andrew, when you were talking about like paying attention, right? It's hard to pay attention when the attention's already been spent. You already spent the attention on what should be happening, what is happening, how well is it happening. So it's so hard. You can't spend it twice. Your attention's already gone the moment that you're thinking about what should be happening. So there's none left for you to be paying attention to everything that's unfolding as it unfolds. And I didn't really get that. And I never even put it in those words until just now that, it's hard for me to pay attention when it's already been spent.
Yeah.
Because that lets me know that shit is past tense. Like I can't continue to be involved in this moment when I have already mentally checked out of this moment.
Yeah. And like trying to maintain both, almost like perspective of being involved and like trying to be involved, but maintaining some other attention being spent.
Right. I'm in the back seat and somehow I'm like, take a left.
Yeah. Yeah. As opposed to being in the driver's seat. Yeah. Right. Well, it's like being in the back seat with no one in the driver's seat.
No. And I'm just like, take a left. And the wheel's just looking back at me like, oh, if you want to take a left, just feel free to hop in the seat.
Right.
Can't do it on my own.
And then I'm like, shit, I'm in the trunk. How do we get in here?
Yeah. Right. But
someone let me out. I'm holding onto the keys.
And it's like this, and the less kind of faith in yourself you have, or fewer things that you've jumped into, it's like the further back it can be, like the safer it can feel to be further back, as opposed to like being just involved. And then it's like any situation versus how many times have you like just thought about stuff or what to do, or like, indecisiveness, even when you're picking something or choosing something, instead of like, oh yeah, I've made decisions before, like having that faith in gut instinct, kind of, instead of constantly contemplating and like wondering, going back and forth about options and stuff.
That's such a common thing. And I know it's something I've talked to people in coaching for a long time, is I just don't feel like I'm part of the group. I feel left out. It's like, there's no group. Like the relationship isn't between you and the group. It's between you and you. The more you're just being yourself, the less you give a fuck about fitting in, which is when, oddly enough, you feel like you're fitting in. Who are you fitting in with? You. That's who you're fitting in with. And so you're not looking to other people, and that's why it seems so seamless. And that's why it's so frustrating when you're not in it, because it looks like the people who are just doing it effortlessly.
God.
Right? And it's
How I wish it
because
was so.
they're not doing it for you. They're
No.
not doing it for anyone else. They're doing it for them. Right. And that's what's so misleading about it, is that you think like, wow, all these people are laughing so easy and they must be really good with people. It's like, it's not about the people. You know, you want it to be about the people because you don't want it to be about you.
Right.
You don't want it to be about your relationship with you. You want to be able to go into a group, have everybody love you without you loving you. You want to go into a group and have everybody enjoy what you're saying without you actually enjoying what you're talking about.
Right.
You just want to have it all scripted. And that's the problem, is that will never lead you to that happiness. It has to come to you. You can't just sit there practicing what you want to say to people for a positive response and then expect to enjoy that when they give it to you, because it wasn't yours.
It was hollow.
It was hollow. You planned it, you scripted it, and like there was so much effort, and then you get it and it didn't feel at all like you hoped. It didn't feel like that effortless flow. Exactly. Because the effortless flow was when you dared to just say it without scripting it. It popped into your head, you spewed it out. Maybe it didn't come out clearly or not, and then maybe you jump around a little bit. Maybe somebody gets offended, but in that, you're being you. And they have the ability to be them. And it has nothing to do with them, you know, at all. And it's so very interesting how it's easy to perceive it like it's about other people. And it's not. You know, and it is at the same time, because those people are you. The only way any of this makes sense is to understand that we are the same awareness. That's the only way it makes any sense, to understand that when you love yourself, you are by virtue of that loving everyone. That when you accept yourself, you are accepting everyone as a practice. This is why people come up to me and it gets really uncomfortably close now. And it's just because I don't have any barriers up anymore. And all of a sudden I'm aware of how much I kept people away by keeping myself away, by thinking about myself and thinking about my relationship with them. You know, like it was important. Now I'm just, guy came up to me at karaoke like a month ago, and he just walks up. He's like, dude, fucking love your vibe, man. He just walked away. That was it. Like, he just came up to me. He's like, that was it. I've been watching you. I loved your vibe. Goodbye. I was like, all right, cool. Yeah. You know, just stuff like that. Or the other day we were at Terminal Pub. Guy gets in the line behind me. He seems interested in me. And I'm like, all right, whatever. I don't want to, you know, I'm not being a dick about it. I'm just in line for my beer.
Quick chat.
Then his dad comes over. And his dad is like, bearded and really like relaxed in his 60s, and he randomly tells me about how he woke up to his story in his 50s and that his life has been transformed ever since. Randomly out of nowhere. I didn't instigate the conversation. No. I barely said a word. He's like, here's my dad. And then the guy like rips on his son for for just being drunken and starts telling me about his story and his transformation and all of that, and I didn't in any way start any of it. Now, if he'd come up to anybody else in that bar who was trying to get somewhere, who was trying to hit on someone, trying to you know, have a specific time, they wouldn't have listened to him at all. They wouldn't have heard him at all. They wouldn't have heard themselves because they weren't in that state of mind where they could receive it. And this is what I mean. There is, I don't want to say a power to it, but there is some fundamental nature to our existence together, in that we are drawn together when we are individually together. It's incredible to watch. The retreats are very much an example of this, because the more you're just being you at the retreat, the less you're looking to everyone else at the retreat, the more complete you feel at that retreat. The more everybody gets from your experience at the retreat, because you're not trying to inform them. You're not trying to make the conversation into something. You're not trying to make it spiritual. You're not trying to get it to a point where we all feel fucking good. You're just being there, chilling, talking about fucking anything. Anything. I don't even know how many subjects we've went through in the last like 40 minutes. We've talked about a lot of stuff. That is a normal conversation. That is a conversation. That's communication. That's communion. That's where we're actually in connection with one another. Why? Because we're sitting here being, not being anything, not trying to get anywhere. And that's the retreat. To me, that's what the retreats are for. Right. There is sometimes this idea that the retreats are for self-improvement. The retreats are for me to dig out of my shit. You can do that. You can do that. That's just fine. But you're going to get far more out of them if you come and just chill and just be there. Because what do you want to practice in your life? Do you want to practice self-help? Do you want to practice self-improvement? Is this what you want to do for the rest of your fucking existence?
Break
And I'm
out the
asking
checklist.
this right now. Like, is this what you really want to practice? Is this constant analytical way of living your life, looking for every fucking error and everything that you can improve? Or do you want to actually practice living? Do you want to practice living? Because the only way to practice living is to live, which means letting go of that idea that you need to improve. The only thing you're going to improve is letting go of the idea that you need to improve, which means you're going to be yourself, which is where you're going to feel that flow. You're going to feel that connection. Yeah. So come to the retreat, chill out with us. You know what I mean? That just come play pool with me. It's a lot of fun because I don't give a fuck. I really don't. Like, we could switch like which suit we are halfway through the game. Several times during the game, you can randomly just go, I'm good. Because nobody cares. It's just about playing. I know there have been games of pool we've been halfway through, and then all of a sudden, an hour later, we haven't played a game. Like, we haven't shot at all, and it's just because we're talking.
Right.
And then we actually forget. It's like, whose shot was it? Who was shooting at what? I don't know. You want stripes? Yeah, all right.
Sure.
You know, it's like, and that's it. It's meant to be what it is. You know, and you are what you are, and we accept you as that. We want to see that. We want to see you just be you. There can be so much pressure when you come to these retreats thinking, oh, my life is going to transform. That's true, but not because you're trying to force it, but because you're not. Because that's been what you've been going through. That's your known. You trying to control things. You trying to be something else. You know, experience the unknown with us. Just be you.
And be a component of that situation, you know, that you're stepping into. It's like you bringing yourself, you being yourself, you being fulfilled, like in yourself wholly, like that shifts situations too. Like that makes the retreat what it is. Like the retreats aren't this whole thing that like is going to be any sort of guarantee. It's like each of us brings what we can, you know, being ourselves as best, you know, right. The best way we can. It's like, why not? Like, what good are you doing to yourself by not just making the most of situations? And it doesn't mean, you know, being jolly old fellow all the time, but like it's an option too. You know, it is constantly an option to be that and like to have fun and like, you know, joke around and laugh and just like just straight up not take yourself that seriously. Because then
I'm coming to a retreat ho-hoing now.
Jolly good fella.
That's right.
I can get a shirt with that on it, maybe some merch, but
I gotta freshen up my pirate lingo.
Oh yeah.
Yo.
We did go to the Landlubber pub.
That's what I mean. I need to get my pirate lingo up, man. Ahoy, mateys.
Arrgh, I see some.
Anybody listening, by the way, if you're in the Nanaimo area or on Vancouver Island, do check out the Landlubber Pub.
The Landlubber Pub.
They have fantastic service
Delicious.
and legendary tater tots. That's actually how they were introduced to us, was as legendary tater tots. And I'm not actually gonna argue. They were amazing.
Yeah. They're like tater sticks too. Yeah. Almost like a mozzarella stick.
They were mega tots, man.
Yeah. Ginormo tots.
Oh my god, gigantots. Trying to show tots.
Can we legally call them tots?
These are legal tots, sir.
Just taters.
They've grown into taters.
Yeah.
That's it.
Oh, legendary taters.
That's the fun of concepts. That's exactly what it is. It's being able to fuck around with it, being able to use it because it's your tool. It really is. I mean, this is one of the reasons I find it so funny when people get mad at me for talking about God as, you know, reality,
right? As
awareness, as you know, all that is. What is, quite literally. That's it. And they're like, well, you can't just arbitrarily define God. It's a guy in the sky and he's got a son. It's like,
what's the Bible?
What did you just do?
Yeah, what's the Bible of not defining God?
And that's one of the things I love about
Their logic is not
Dan McClellan on TikTok is the fact that he always points to the fact that you're interpreting the story. Like what you believe in is your interpretation of all of this stuff. It's not actually the thing, because the thing itself doesn't have any inherent meaning. Like the book just continues to contradict itself start to finish. And so you're just cherry picking things that validate the way you want to live and look at the world.
Right.
That's it. So everybody is just kind of coming up with an idea of God that rationalizes their idea of themselves, that justifies their irresponsibility, that justifies, their continued desire to be in control, because that's just it. If you're always desiring control and you're causing conflict for yourself all the time, and you don't want to rationalize or recognize what you're doing, then you just have to hope for something to save you and then justify it as that's just my nature. I'm just sinful. We're sinful creatures. All this conflict and misery and suffering.
There's no responsibility in
that's
that.
just part of being human, right? As opposed to, well, the alternative would be responsibility. Like you could look at all the shit that you're causing for yourself and go, maybe I could stop that, instead of, well, I can't stop that, so I'm not gonna until I die.
Right.
And then it's gonna be fine, because I believe in this idea of God that's gonna save me.
I'll see enough Hail Marys at the end that I'm gonna get a pass. Jesus will know how sad I was. Like, my bad, but you made me this way, so really this is your fuck up, Jesus. This is real.
Fucking Jesus.
I mean, you made me this way. That's what doesn't make sense to me, though.
Misread the recipe.
Right. It feels like Burger King. It should be the Bible King. Have it your way.
Oh man.
Like that's what it really sounds like. It's just your interpretation is your perspective. It's your way, and that's your decision. Final. This is how it should be.
Yeah, absolutely. This is gonna be fun. This has been fun, admittedly. The three of us in the room shooting the shit.
Hell yeah.
It's dope, And Andrew, fuck man, since last week you've turned a real corner. Yeah. Fuck, I know. Last week, well, again, this is all hard shit. I really want everyone to know that, listener, this isn't easy shit. Simple, not easy. It really is about processing things. And then the worst part about it is that you're like, yeah, I'm being myself. I got my show. Oh my fucking God, what the hell is that? And that's and all of a sudden you're dealing with it again. That's why I like the song "Only" by 9 Inch Nails. Because there's this part where he's talking about going inside. It was like a scab that couldn't seal itself shut, and I climbed through. And he goes on to say, and now I am somewhere that I'm not supposed to be, and I can see things I know I really shouldn't see, and now I know why. Now I know why things aren't as pretty on the inside. And it's a great lyric, and it's because that's where your shit is, but that's the shit that's reflecting out into your world. It's the stuff that you deal with every day when you go to this grocery store and you feel like people are judging you. It's the stuff you go through every day when you're walking down the street and you're worried about conversations you had yesterday or conversations that haven't happened yet. That's the stuff on the inside that's reflecting into everything you do. It's when somebody, accidentally bumps into you and you're like, what the fuck? Rather than just, hey man, no worries.
Right.
That stuff reflects out. And it's so important to recognize that. Again, our relationship with each other is our relationship with ourselves.
Yeah.
It's a good relationship with anyone and everyone. Every relationship's that opportunity to be reflective of your relationship with yourself, and just having, not being able to know what's being expressed or reflected even. It's like we really are in our experience and in our perspective, certain things very much alone. It's entirely unknown what you're expressing even all the time. There isn't that control in it at all, and that sense of control only exists within your personal experience about yourself. So you can't even really know what's being expressed. So you might as well just jump into situations and just do your best to be yourself, and whatever that means. And that's just what you're doing regardless. You are expressing that regardless of how tense or relaxed you are. It's that's what's being expressed in your actions and your words and your tone and all of it all the time. But yeah, it really does just come back to your own perspective of yourself.
Mhm.
And
You showed that at karaoke the other night. It was actually really funny because the
Yeah.
first song you went up, you didn't really dig it. And it's because you were kind of like worried about singing it.
yeah,
Second song you went up, you could tell you're just like, I'm just gonna fucking sing this.
yeah,
And
Oh,
you
yeah.
did.
You're having
Yeah.
much
And
more
you
fun.
sang it, and
Yeah.
you had a good time, and
Mhm.
everybody in the bar rippled it,
Yeah.
which I
Yeah.
thought was great.
yeah,
But it's just that,
Yeah.
and we do that all
It's
the
like that
time because
option.
it's like we have this thought in our head, like, okay, hold on, if I just think through this while I'm going through it, it's going to be better.
Right.
And
We assume that.
it's never better. It's
Yeah.
never better. Like it's always worse.
Mhm.
Sure, we think we have some degree of control, but now we have all that fear
Mhm.
that goes with it. There's a me to be in control. There's an end result that I've got to achieve, as opposed to just, all right, let's see how this goes.
Mhm.
I love that shit about living as a whole. All right, let's just see how it goes.
Mhm.
Hey, Jess, second song was awesome. Exactly.
That's right.
And it's just because the difference is such a memorable night. It really was. The difference is how much you're in it.
Mhm.
Isn't that funny how basically the impact of everything that we do, not on others, but on our own life, really comes down to how much we're involved with what we're doing?
Mhm.
I find that amazing.
Mhm.
I could have the most simple experience in my life, but I'll be so fully involved with it that it represents the rest of my life.
Mhm.
Like in the weirdest way. That's why when you are on a psychedelic trip, that's why when you are, in a deep state of relaxation, you could be sitting by a river looking at all of the memories you've ever had. And it's all symbolized in the thing that you're experiencing.
Right.
Everything is like that when you pay attention to it, but we miss that. We forget that because we live in those concepts.
We're running to the next thought.
Mhm.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
And not being able to see how much you're running. It's just like it's just because that's my I'm so zoomed in on my next thought.
Mhm.
Right. And I was thinking about decisions the other day and choices, and how choices from one perspective is just the last thought I landed on.
Mm.
Really. It's not like I'm making I know this is a decision. It's like, really, it's just the last thought that I settled on is what that decision is. And I just don't want to settle on another one. But it's not that I'm absolutely sure that this is the best thought or that I need to be sure. It's just like, I'm gonna stay here.
Mhm.
I'm gonna stay here.
Yeah.
And then we're gonna replicate that.
Mhm.
But being able to just not pressure myself when I am in the midst of a decision. And even if I do want to settle on a new thought, so fucking what?
Mhm.
It's not so set in stone. I'm chatting with people and I'm letting them know about moving and the recent changes. And they're like, wow, that's so crazy. I don't know if I could do that. I was like, you do that every day.
Mhm.
You're making a decision. You don't know how it's going to turn out. Just because you're not uprooting your whole life, it's like you uproot your whole life. And in a single moment, my life has felt like it changed. And I didn't actually move geography, like the
Mhm.
geography of the expression, the reflection.
Yeah.
But it felt like in one moment, my whole life changed from a phone call, a chance encounter, getting a new job, getting fired from a job, quitting a job, starting a relationship, meeting someone, reconnecting. Like a life can change in a moment. And we forget that. And we think that it needs to be this big, grand change that you're walking across a stage. And now coming to the stage, Amanda, 2.5 people,
She is new and improved.
You're right. Updated
Better
software.
decisions.
Yes.
Laughs
Decision Maker
more.
3.5 software. Oh my goodness. We want things to be so large because we think that it needs to be, but it's the small changes. I'm rushing to work and then I'm like, fuck it. There's no getting there on time. I noticed a ladybug on a flower. And this has actually happened where I was late to work. And then I just realized, well, fuck it. Whether I'm 5 minutes late or 10 minutes late, really is not that big of a difference. I stopped. I noticed a little ladybug that was on a flower next to my car. And I just stopped and just stared at it for a little bit. It felt fantastic. And then I was like an extra 5 minutes late. And when I got to work, I was so relaxed that the rest of my day was so smooth. And previously I have gotten a speeding ticket because I was late and I was gunning it to work. And I was still late. And I was gunning it, got a ticket, and was still late. And the time that I stopped, hung out with the fucking ladybug on a flower, was an extra 5 minutes late.
Uh-huh.
But because I arrived at work so relaxed, it didn't matter. Like, it wasn't so life or death. It wasn't this huge thing. And just such a small moment ended up having such a huge impact. So it's just, things don't have to be so grandiose and huge. It's the small decisions, it's the small moments that really can have such a profound impact. And it's easy to forget that.
Oh, it's the smallest shit too. It really is. Like, it's so funny. I was talking to somebody the other day and I mentioned that, like, you let one thing get to you in the morning, it's like it sets the tone for the next
The whole
thing.
day's shot.
Well, it doesn't have to be,
No,
but it's
but
like it becomes even more important to be aware of that next thing that's about to trigger you, right? Because you can stop the dominoes, but they're gaining momentum, right? Like,
they're picking up speed.
Right? That's exactly it. And it's just that sensitivity moment to moment. It really is, because it makes it easier as you go throughout the day. But you know, the first, like, how many of us wake up in the morning and start going, "Fuck, what do I got to do?" You know, thinking about the task list first thing. That's a fucking gnarly tone for the rest of the day. There's so much pressure in that.
Right.
You know, and the alternative is to wake up and go, "Okay, I'm up. What's first?"
Stretching, maybe.
Right? You know, just whatever it might be. Exactly. You know, but it's just a softening of that mental attitude. It's a softening of the pressure on you to perform in a certain way. Right? And if you aren't doing that, then all of a sudden you start to look at these things as fucking virtues. Patience, you know, being calm. All that stuff. It's like, those aren't practices so much as a result of just not letting shit get to you. Like, it's not something you can get to. Can you imagine trying to get to patience? You're like waiting for patience.
How much longer we got here? I need that so I can be more patient. Yeah, it doesn't work. But yeah, the little things too, like even having the idea that some big event or shift or like decision is going to change everything about your life, as opposed to it just being like throughout the day, moment to moment, like not taking yourself as seriously, like letting yourself go, and like even parsing out like different days to being like, oh, I'm having a good day or a bad day or whatever. Like that can shift in a moment too. Like the day could begin the moment you realize that, you know, the night that you went through wasn't disconnected from the day before. And it's like, it doesn't have to be this hard and fast, like, oh, I'm having a good day, and so that's going to cascade, or a bad day, so it's going to cascade. It's like you have the opportunity to, you know, shift it in the moment, in the experience. And so, yeah, it's it's appreciated to, you know, keep that in mind. As much as I'm saying it, I'm like, I still feel like I'll feel rigidity and tension and whatnot, but then
Of course.
it's like that's just what's there right now.
Correct.
Yeah.
And the mistake, I think, or rather the tendency, is to think, oh, it's still there, rather than to go, but it's not what it was. Right. Like, and again, it's that erosion thing that we were talking about earlier. Like, we're looking for some stark change, and it's fucking layer by layer.
Yeah.
Flip a switch.
Day
We're
by
done.
day,
Forever.
moment by moment. That's why I say to so many people, like, they're like, oh, I feel like you should get this by now. It's like, talk to me in 20 years.
Yeah.
Like, talk to me in 20 years. For I'm not fucking around at all. Like, I've even said this to my daughter when she was practicing violin when she was younger. She'd be like, you know, I'm feeling frustrated. I feel like I'm not getting this fast. And I'm like, once you practice like 1,000 times, come talk to me.
Right.
You know, until then, like, you're just being hard on yourself, like, for no good reason. But by the time you do practice that 1,000th time, you're just like, right, things take time. You know, like, that's all it is. You're just like
that smoothness, but we have an expectation that you should have a master smoothness at the beginning.
Right.
There's no way, like, your first time making a pot of rice is gonna be rough. You're probably gonna burn the first 20 fucking pots of rice, man. Of course you are. You just started. You're not gonna have that chef's intuition of oh, the water's ready. until you've cooked 1,000 pots of rice. And then you're like, oh, wait, right. You're eyeing it. You're like, a little bit more oil. You know what? A little bit more water. Just like, it's just, you're going to have that smoothness. That's going to come with putting in your reps. That's going to come with doing something for 1,000 times. But we have this expectation that I should have beginner's luck, or I should have that master's smoothness. And I am just starting out on something. It's like, of course, it's going to be a little rough, but it's not necessarily rough because you're doing it wrong. It's just rough because you're learning your footing. You're figuring it out, and we don't give ourselves space to learn. It's I need to be results oriented. I need to produce this mistake-free result versus learning to be the process that naturally leads to a mistake-free result. But it's just thinking about things as like an ends to a mean, or a means to an end. You know, we only think about the end. We don't think about the means. And we almost get impatient with ourselves. But you don't have to. But it's we classify, I'm either really good at something or really bad at something. And I notice that when I'm like learning something new and I'm like, fuck, this should be smoother. And it's like, no, it's natural. It's just natural to have those little bumps in the road. It's just I almost expect there to be no bumps.
Right. Yeah, it's like take singing, for example, like going to karaoke or something, like expecting yourself to be really, really good at singing. And it's like, well, how do you think you get there? Like, do you think you're going to get there from like every single time trying to be perfect?
You mean it's not just thinking about it?
Exactly. Or are you going to show up and like have fun with it? Like at least do that. And then that will naturally, you'll be able to find a much better tone. But again, it's like, to what point? It's like you're not having fun with it to get to a point where it is better. It's like better for who? If you're already having fun singing.
But Andrew, if everybody's looking up to me, obviously that's the peak time. Like that's my peak experience right there. Right. Like the whole crowd, right? Like it's just stupid. Like at the end of the day, because even then you could have that and not feel satisfied
People
with it.
People do though, and they pretend that they're not satisfied, or they pretend that they're not unsatisfied. That's the thing that I've noticed with a lot of people who are in either leadership positions, or they have that fame, or they have that. And it's like celebrities and all those people that are looked up to still are miserable, but they just don't want to admit it. They want to pretend like, no, I've reached this pinnacle.
Yeah,
exactly. But then look at Britney Spears, right? That's an example. Had a visible meltdown, and yet didn't snap out of that lifestyle completely. Given enough time, given enough conditioning, went right back into it. Right? Had the breakdown visibly. It's confirmed. Still could not admit it fully or enough to break out and not want to repeat that lifestyle. But it was like, oh, I'd rather go back to the devil I know than the one that I don't. And so I'd rather go back to that shitstorm because at least it's familiar. And I'm getting so much encouragement from the people that are in that particular shitstorm to come back. Because me coming back not only puts me back into my own self-induced coma, but it also maintains their coma.
Yeah, certainly. Like that feeling of a pull to something more familiar for sure. And like, giving yourself, like cutting yourself that slack too in new environments and new situations, like really having a bar for yourself doesn't make any sense in any situation
at all.
Period. Like showing up, expecting yourself to be something, or to like, that'll only ever get in the way. It's like strapping on the, trailer of extra weight getting into a situation instead of not having that. But I guess it's that sense of, it goes with that sense of control in a sense too. Like if I know how I should be doing, then I'll be able to have a better idea of how I'm doing along the way, instead of like, no, either way, you're not gonna know. Either way, like after something's expressed or shared, if you respond, like there's not a, any degree of like a correct direction to take something. But, when you're used to having formulaic conversations and like, this common dialogue, correct back and forth, like things to say in response to certain things, and then topics that are familiar and you've talked about a bunch, and you just like vary those topics, as opposed to just like having conversations that are more free flowing and like you're stepping through the unknown as you go, like being a component of a new conversation instead of one that could be more familiar or existing, like cutting yourself some slack as you experience more of those, because like there's going to be the pull to try and maintain like, all right, what's the best thing to say next, what's a typical response to this, what's something you've learned to practice in response to, you know, this sort of thing. And I think early on for myself, when I started doing like one-on-one stuff, like it was a lot of, you know, oh, this is a typical thing, but I had almost like a confidence in that because I had learned a lot of stuff and I kept a lot of like certain responses in mind. So they were there because like I have been decent at like memorizing things throughout my life. And, like,
That's how it starts.
having, yeah. And then now realizing like all that stuff isn't necessarily like there's no one size fits all for a response for someone. And so like there can be broader overarching perspectives, but then it's not really, you know, you being yourself. It's not really you expressing yourself. It's a lot of times someone else's words. And we're used to using those so often, like learned words, practiced words, like kind of starting to use your own can make you feel like a big fucking
Because
baby.
they're safe, right?
Yeah.
They're safe words. They're appropriate words. They're approved words. They're
Yeah.
words that other people like,
Yeah.
right? And that's the
Yeah.
point. When they're your words, it's different. But that's one thing that I noticed early on was that a big shift in your perception is when you start recognizing they're all your words. They're all your words. Even the words that you're quoting from somebody else was you.
Yeah.
Like that was you.
Yeah.
That's why it sounds so fucking familiar. The more yourself you are, the more it sounds like you're talking through everyone else. Like that Einstein quote yesterday. Perfect. Tell me this doesn't sound exactly like some of the stupid shit that we'd say, right? A person who's never made mistakes has never tried anything new.
Right.
That's so like
It could be something
fundamentally
like you're just talking about an experience you just had,
right?
Like, yeah, I made some mistakes, but it was a brand new
But
thing.
there are people who'd be like, Einstein said that. It's like a lot of people have said that.
Yeah.
A lot of people have said that
A lot
who
of people
never
have felt
had
that.
their name
First.
put on it. You know, like,
Right.
like that's the point. Is that it's us.
Mhm.
It's us. Like it's always us. And when you start to take that in, then all of a sudden, like I like reading like the Tao Te Ching, the Dhammapada. Like I've read all of these things previously. Why? Well, at one point I might have been looking for an answer. Now I'm just like, I wonder how I worded it here.
Mhm.
Right.
Right? Which is why I enjoy reading Krishnamurti. I'm like, oh, that's good. You know, it's not like, you know, oh shit, oh, I should learn that.
Brand
I'm just
new.
like,
Memorize it now.
that's a great way to put it. You know, like, and that's what it is. Like that's a great. It's a recognition of a mutual insight,
Exactly.
as opposed to trying to learn somebody else's way of living. You're relating to them living. You're going, that's a great way to put it.
Mhm.
Instead of, let me write that down. You know, and there's a big, and put your name on it because you get credit, boy. You know, like it's just so dumb. Instead, do I have any book recommendations? No.
On the website, we have a number
Yes.
on there along with movies. I don't know what kind of scream that was. If that was an excitement scream.
I'm
or
not
like
going to
a-
explain it
Right.
whatsoever. Total Freedom, Krishnamurti. Great place to start.
Freedom. Yeah, I was digging into Freedom from the Known by Krishnamurti as well. That was pretty solid one.
Some of the writings from Freedom from the Known are in Total Freedom.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because remember, all the
Start with that.
Krishnamurti books, with the exception of his journal,
Mhm.
were all just collections of his talks. Like they're all transcribed talks, which fucking blows me away. Like
Mhm.
every time I read it, I'm like, you came up with that right off the top of your fucking head. Like, it's just like, damn, stuff like that. But there's a lot of stuff he said. Like there were points in Krishnamurti's life where he was, you know, downright offensive.
Mm.
Like he used, like during the 60s and 70s, he made a lot of videos that just caught people off guard. Like, why don't you change? Oh my God, that video is amazing. Where he's just like, you know, is it this? Is it this? Or do you really not care? Like he's just straight up about it. Or do you just not care?
Yeah.
And then that's a great point. You know, like just, but that's it. Is Krishnamurti is great because he said a lot of things that weren't listen to me. It's why are you asking me? It's probably my favorite part of Krishnamurti. It's like, stop asking me.
Mhm.
You know, why are you asking me? There's your insight. Look at that.
Right. Right. Because we know exactly why we're, or it's not that we know exactly. It's just that we're the best we're the best source of finding out why we're not, why we're not embodying a certain change. It's like, what you can find out what you're holding on to. No one else can answer that for you. So as much as when people are coming to either me or when I have gone to someone else for advice, I've been looking for them to give me the answer that only I could give myself. In the same way, vice versa. So when I do give someone advice, I'm like, I'm going to share some ideas and thoughts that come to mind, but this is a poor fucking substitute to what you could come up with. You know your experiences, you lived them, you are your life. If there is anybody who is going to be able to come up with the best, most compatible option for where you are right now, that is you and only you. So when you go to a friend, an expert, think of them as your assistant. They're just going to give you some extra information. They might do some extra legwork for you. They might be able to give you a new consideration, but ultimately you are the best person to come up with your next step while you're in the middle of this step. And it's just by paying attention to what's actually happening right now, what's available, and then just picking a direction and going in it. And usually, I don't know if you guys remember, I had standardized testing in school, and same things for for people that are watching this right now. In standardized testing, during a lot of the prep, they were like, trust your gut. The answer that you lean towards in a multiple choice test is usually right. Don't change your answer after you've picked it. So when you're making a decision going forward, it's like, listen to your gut, trust your gut, trust the direction that you're leaning towards when you're in the midst of making decisions, and then don't undo it. As soon as you pick that answer and you started to go in that direction, just go for it. Give it a shot before you're like, oh no, because immediately there's that regret. You make a decision and you're like, oh, did I make the right one? It's like, well, at least try this decision out before you immediately think that it's wrong and you want to switch it, because that same doubt is going to be there no matter the choice you pick. There's never going to be an option that you pick where you're not going to have doubt about it almost immediately afterwards. So don't let the doubt be the thing that makes you think that you should change directions. Just trust your gut and pay attention to what's happening. And usually things have a way of just working themselves out. You don't have to stress.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, because, as soon as there's this thought about anything that's going on or anything that's happening, or a decision that you make, there can be immediately different perspectives that kind of start flooding in and wondering about, trying to find correct answers or the best way to live your life and control that. And it's all future focused. It's all in the future, despite none of that, even for, things that you're doing, having an idea of what the future is of that still isn't any guarantee. There's no guarantee period of anything beyond just what you're doing and where you're at. So having this perspective that things should be different, or changing a decision, or shifting certain things, or wondering about certain things, it's you're just looking at this complete question mark, trying to fill in the question mark with details. No, it's still a question mark that you're looking at, though. It's just got different, images and pictures within the question mark, but it's still a question mark no matter what. And so there isn't so much necessarily, it doesn't have to be so much of a pull to look at it when you keep in, remember that it's still a question mark regardless of what you're looking at.
Yeah. I like the absurdity of asking someone like, Andrew, what's the best way for me to live my life? It's just so when you look at it, you're like, hold
Sunday
on.
morning,
right?
Put on your best polo and go to church. Make sure it's Catholic, though. That's when I go to.
The cross must be prominent.
And that'll make me feel better.
Right?
That's right.
But that's the thing. And then I go ask somebody else, they're telling me something else, and then that's
insane.
the whole thing. That's
Right.
exactly. Because
You've got a cross. It should be a star.
That's it. But nobody
I
can
have a
answer
star.
that.
I can't talk to you.
Our labels don't match.
You're the only one on the path. It's your path. It's you're the only one. Nobody else can help you walk it. All they can do is mention maybe certain scenery that looks similar. Like, hey, you know, when you're surrounded by people judging you, you might want to look down at the feet. You know, stop looking ahead, look down, because, you know, you're going to trip over your own bullshit. You know, just keep an eye out. I'm just saying, you know, like it's
lift the knees.
Right, exactly. But you can't actually be there to help them do that. And it's so easy for people to go, and I say it's so easy for me to want to go, where's the next vine though? Where's the next tripping place? It's like, maybe you missed the point. Look down at your feet. You know, like that was pretty much it. That's the best I can offer you. I can't offer you a roadmap. I can't offer you a specific walkthrough per level. You know, like that would be great. But what I can do is tell you, like, pay attention, like over and over and over again. That's all I'm fucking saying. Pay attention. Don't get distracted by stupid shit.
Yeah.
You know, because there's a conflict for it. That's it. That said, we are at the end of today's episode. We're going to continue on Patreon after this for an hour. We're going to talk about, I don't know, some spicy things to throw into our upcoming series. And we're just going to shoot the breeze. If you can join us, we would love to see you. Patreon.com/Dualistic Unity. Otherwise, we'll be back tomorrow for what I believe is a roundtable episode.
Right. Yes.
I believe so.
Yeah.